Hi everyone, it's McDonald here. Welcome to this week's ICE market commentary on the Russell 2000 index and the US equity markets. What we see here is just a beautiful uptrend on the daily chart. Really nice trend, having had good pullbacks. We had this healthy pullback a couple of weeks ago, and now we're just pushing on up again. Everything looking rosy, except for just a few things that are creeping in. One thing is that here, as we've been breaking up to new highs, see how the MACD and RSI are making lower highs. That, as many of you will know, is called bearish divergence and is a bit of a sign of a weakening trend. However, at the moment, it's still looking strong. We'd start to look for points where this is likely to turn around. Divergence doesn't say this is going to stop dead in its tracks and fall now. It just says this trend is starting to run out of steam and it's likely to have a pullback at some time. For now, though, still looking healthy based on that daily chart. In fact, one thing you might notice, see this little cluster of candles here where these four daily chart highs were very, very similar. If we just come down a time frame and look at that, you'll see that this is the kind of thing that creates beautiful breakout opportunities here, where price is still making higher lows, forms equal highs. When we do put in this higher low, break up through the high, it can just provide some really good trading opportunities and those kind of scenarios. So do watch out for these breaks of flat levels as they occur. Let's go up to the weekly chart. This is where I've got all the key levels marked in. And you can see now we've broken up through with this 801, as we discussed. Many times we've talked about this level. It's now broken up through, but there's a real key test coming up, and that is at 832 as we come up and we test these previous highs, and up towards 850 as we test the major high on this chart. This is going to be key. This is major, and I strongly expect the Russell to have a decline from that level. What kind of a decline am I expecting? At least another pullback back towards the averages, maybe a bigger one, and we'll have a look at the monthly chart in a minute to see why. But here, we're certainly coming up to resistance. We've got that divergence on the daily. Even here on the weekly chart, on an ever so subtle basis, as we just break up to new highs here, see the RSI and the MACD are failing to make new highs as well. It's just not looking as strong as it has been throughout this trend. We're coming up to these all-time highs, and it is looking likely to find some resistance up there and to have a bit of a decent fall-off. How big a fall-off is that likely to be? Let's come and have a look at a monthly chart. What we've got to remember here is that we've come up 1, 2, 3, 4 months in a row. Then we had an ever so slightly bearish looking monthly candle, and it looked like we might get a pullback. The fact that we've now pushed on even higher, every bit this pushes up and up and up, it just means that there's going to be a bigger sell-off coming at some stage. Not necessarily this week, but there has to be a sell-off. It always happens. Look at every single move. There has to be a decent sell-off. Now at the time it feels like a big sell-off. If we just come back and look at this, say, previous monthly action from 2003 up to 2007, we have these big runs up, then a pullback, big runs up, pullback. The pullbacks actually, once they're done, don't look that big on the chart, do they? And that's really all we're due. We've already had a big run up and a pullback. We've had a big run up again, and we're just due a pullback back towards the kind of 700 kind of zone before pushing on again. That's what I expect will happen this year, but I'm very, very cautious now around these levels of any long-term positions because I'm looking for that pullback to occur. It will occur, it has to occur. It doesn't have to occur this month or even next month, but it will occur at some stage, and as we approach these highs with some divergence, with price being overextended from the averages, it's just starting to look more and more likely that will occur. So what am I expecting though for this week? I'm still being very cautious. As I said last week, I'm cautiously bullish, and the reason is that the higher time frames are showing the requirement for a sell-off, but I'm cautiously bullish because I'm expecting, in fact, let's come and look at the daily chart, I'm expecting this trend just to continue for a little bit further and to at least come up and test these highs around 830 up to 850. I will, at 830, which is actually only 10 more points away here on the Russell, I will no longer be bullish. I will stop being bullish for the time being as we get up to 830 because I'm expecting a pullback at least towards the weekly averages. Even the daily averages is overextended. If we just have a look here, we've got to pull back at least to the daily, which is around about 800, more likely to the weekly, which is about 780, and in fact, at some stage, more likely back to the monthly chart averages, which is around about 700. So all of them, daily, weekly, monthly, all showing that we are due a pullback. Let's just have a look at a couple of the cash markets. Let's have a look at the S&P. And the S&P here is actually approaching its key level as well, although it's a bit further away. But we've got up around about 1370 here, some really strong old highs from back in 06 and 07, and we're approaching that level now. It's only about 30 points away, but that's still a fairly decent run on the S&P, but there's not much in the way between here and there. So the S&P might push on a little bit further, might get up and test that, which if it does is very likely to push the Russell up towards the upper level of its range, but up, testing those previous highs. And then lastly, I just wanted to have a quick look at the Nasdaq today, and to just talk a bigger picture view here on the Nasdaq. And the Nasdaq's really strong. It's been one of the strongest. It was one of the first ones to change direction. It was one of the weakest in the sell-off back in 2008, i.e. it didn't decline as far as the others. And then now, it's been one of the stronger ones. When we just look at this and we zoom out here, there's just not much stopping this Nasdaq going higher based on previous price action. In fact, what I would say is if we come right out here, I'm expecting price to come up and test levels not seen since 99 and 2000, up around these 3000 area. Not anytime soon, but this year. In the next year or two, I'm quite bullish on this Nasdaq outlook. I'm expecting price to get up around those levels. In the shorter term, though, like the other indices, the weekly here is a bit overextended. So is the daily, but even more so is the monthly chart. All of the indices, all of the cash markets, as well as the futures markets, all showing that we just need a pullback before continuing in that uptrend. As and when that happens, I will be very bullish, and I'll be looking to get into positions for longer term moves back up. In the short term, I am cautiously long on all these markets, but I will be looking for any chance to sell, any signs of a good sell-off, and I'll be looking to short back into those averages before positioning myself into longer term trades, looking for continuations to the upside. Just coming back very quickly and just wrapping up on the Russell, the exact levels we're watching. All of these charts, daily, weekly, monthly, overextended, showing signs of pullback. However, at the same time, remaining very bullish. So we have some contradiction there, but I'm expecting the price to probably come up and test the upper region of this zone, or more like 850, maybe even a little bit beyond it, simply because the S&P looks like it might have some room to move higher. So does the Nasdaq. However, around these levels is where I will stop being bullish, at least for the short term. I'm expecting a pullback there, at least into the daily or weekly averages, maybe even to the monthly averages. And only if we break up through there and start pulling back towards it and finding some good support there as compared to resistance, I may change my view. But for now, I am cautiously bullish as we approach those levels, and I'll remain bearish as we get up there until we get a little bit of a pullback or a significant breakthrough to prove me wrong at a turnaround at those levels. Hope that helps everybody. Happy trading. Speak to you next week.